Imagine waking up on a normal morning. Outside the window, a familiar cityscape. But today, everything will change forever. You approach a device resembling a doorway and enter a code. Your route, from a residential area to a business center, a distance of 30 kilometers. You take a step forward. Not a plane ride, not a subway ride, not waiting in traffic. Just a step. And there you are, where you need to be, instantly. Now ask yourself, what happens at that very moment when matter ceases to obey distance? We won't talk about complex equations or quantum states. We'll show you the principle itself. Look at the screen. See those chambers? They are the starting and ending points of your journey. Between them is not a tunnel or a portal in our usual sense. This is a precise and instantaneous recreation, scanning every particle, transmitting information, and reassembling it at the other end. Complete identity, the original and its exact copy. But isn't it the same thing if every molecule, every cell, every thought is reproduced with absolute precision? You're probably wondering, what happens to those left behind in the first chamber? A reasonable question. The answer lies in a process engineers call zero pause. At the moment of activation, the system doesn't destroy, it reads. Imagine taking a perfect photograph of an object, and the object itself remains in place. But that's not quite right. Data is you, your unique structure, and at the moment the transmission is complete, the original structure in the sending chamber gently dissipates, turning into neutral energy to power the system. It's not a disappearance. It's a transition into the form of information, which is the very essence of things. And now you're standing in another chamber, thousands of kilometers from home. You don't feel dizzy. You don't feel sick. Everything happens too quickly for human perception. One moment you're here, the next you're there. Your brain simply doesn't have time to process this leap. He interprets it as an ordinary moment, like the blink of an eye. You step out of the cell onto the street of a strange city, where they are already waiting for you. Everything is as planned. Everything except one thing, the realization that the concept of far has just lost its original meaning for you. Forever. So a step has been taken. Teleportation has ceased to be an experiment and has become commonplace. But what happens to a world built on bridging distances? A world where miles of asphalt, steel rails, and airways lay between points A and B? Look at these shots. This is an airport. Or rather, what's left of it. The giant airliners that once plied the skies are now motionless. They no longer consume tons of kerosene, nor are they pulled out onto the runway. They are simply stored, like museum exhibits in a gigantic parking lot. Now think about it. Where do all these complex systems go? Thousands of planes, tens of thousands of trains, millions of trucks. They don't disappear overnight. Their life cycle simply stops. New ones are not built. Old ones are scrapped or become monuments to another era. Mighty cargo ships in ports become ghosts. Their enormous hulls no longer cut through the ocean waves, but slowly rust at their piers. Ocean lanes, once the planet's arteries, are becoming quiet bays. But what's replacing them? Imagine a chain of teleportation chambers lined up in a row. This is a new conveyor belt, a new logistics hub. A truck delivers a container to the chamber. An operator scans the code, and then it's on the other side of the world where another truck picks it up for the final mile. It's not just time that's being reduced. Everything is being reduced. Emissions, road wear, human resources. The planet, entangled in transportation networks, suddenly breathes a sigh of relief. The noise of megacities, once a third the roar of engines, is subsiding. But that's only the visible part. What about the invisible? The millions of people who drove those trains, flew those planes, and repaired those ships? Their professions are no longer needed to the same extent. An entire civilization built around overcoming distance is forced to seek new applications. Industries unrelated to the movement of bodies and cargo are becoming increasingly valuable. Energy generation for teleports, their maintenance, IT support, and cybersecurity of transmitted data are all becoming increasingly important. A global restructuring is underway, not of infrastructure, but of human society itself. And this is just the beginning. Now let's ask ourselves this question. If distance no longer matters, Where would you choose to make your home? Think back to that morning where our story began. Outside the window, a noisy city, traffic jams, the hustle and bustle. Now imagine instead mountain air, the sound of the surf, or the silence of the forest. Once upon a time, such a choice would have meant giving up work, social life, the benefits of civilization. But now, a teleportation chamber can be installed anywhere. You can live on a remote ranch in the prairie and work in a megacity skyscraper. The difference is a split second. Look at these statistics. They show a rapid outflow of population from large urban areas. Why? The answer is obvious. The value of urban space has always been its accessibility, the concentration of resources and opportunities. But when any point on the planet becomes equally accessible, this value melts away before our eyes. Real estate prices in business centers begin to fall. Office towers become empty. At the same time, small towns and previously inaccessible regions are experiencing an unprecedented boom. The price of a lakeside house or a mountain chalet is rising exponentially. What are we seeing as a result? A new type of settlement is emerging, dispersed settlement. Humanity, which for centuries sought to concentrate in cities, is now spreading across the planet like droplets of water on a glass surface. People are settling where they like the climate, where there are beautiful landscapes, where it's simply quiet. New communities are forming, united not by geography, but by shared interests. A programmer from Tokyo could live next to your home in the Swiss Alps, and an artist from Rio de Janeiro on the other side. Local cultures, traditions, and even languages are beginning to blend at an unprecedented rate. But every coin has a flip side. The infrastructure built over centuries to support dense urban populations is beginning to fail. In some areas it's idle. In others, it can't cope with the influx. A global redistribution of not only living space, but also all associated resources is underway. The planet is being reshaped in a new way, and this process is only gaining momentum. Old maps, where capitals and trade routes were the most important, are hopelessly outdated. A new geography is emerging, and its main principle is the absence of distances. Now let's move on to the space where many of us spend most of our lives, the workplace. Think of a typical office, rows of desks, conference rooms, morning meetings all in one room. Now ask yourself, why bother commuting to that place every day if your work involves viewing information on a screen and interacting with colleagues? With the advent of teleportation, the very concept of an office as a physical locator for employees is rapidly becoming obsolete. Why should a company rent expensive space in the city center when its team can work equally effectively from anywhere on the planet? We are witnessing a massive shift to distributed work models. A team assembled for a project is no longer bound by geography. A specialist from Argentina, a designer from Finland, and a manager from Japan can form a work group as easily as if they were in neighboring offices. Meetings are held in virtual spaces, and physical presence is required only for rare, strategic sessions, easily organized via teleportation. At the same time, the very concept of a workday is becoming flexible. When a team is scattered across dozens of time zones, schedules are synchronized not by a common arrival time at the office, but by the logic of tasks and deadlines. What's happening to giant office buildings? They're not just emptying out. They're being repurposed en masse. Some are being converted into data centers, now servicing critical digital infrastructure. Others are becoming hubs for last-mile logistics, where goods are teleported for final delivery. Still others are being demolished entirely, making way for parks or new housing, as the need for centralized business districts has sharply declined. The commercial real estate market is undergoing a radical transformation. This shift is also changing the structure of cities. Rush hours disappear, traffic jams disappear. Streets once clogged with traffic become more walkable. The rhythm of life changes. There's no longer a need to plan your day around the commute. Hours previously wasted on commuting are freed up. Sociologists are documenting the emergence of a new phenomenon, hybrid presence, where physical movement is used sparingly and the digital environment becomes the basis for interaction. The world of work is no longer defined by address. It is defined by network connectivity. Now let's explore one of the most extraordinary consequences of this new reality. Think back to the last time you traveled. You planned your itinerary, booked a hotel, packed your suitcase. Now imagine that none of this is necessary. You simply take a step and you're somewhere else. Another step and you're already on the third point on the planet. Thus a new social phenomenon is born: constant movement. A category of people is emerging for whom teleportation portals have become not a means to an end, but home itself. Look at these people. They have no permanent address. Their possessions are limited to what they can carry in a backpack. They are not tied to plane or train schedules. Their life is a cycle. Teleportation, a few hours in a new city, the next teleportation. They sleep in special capsules in transit zones, eat in automated cafeterias near portals, their world limited by the coordinate grid on the teleportation map. For them, the value lies not in the destination, but in the process of movement itself. What drives these people? Sociologists identify several reasons for this. For some, it's a form of escape from the routine and responsibilities of a sedentary life. For others, it's a way to overcome an existential vacuum, an attempt to fill an inner void with external movement. Still others have found a business in this. They become human couriers, delivering small urgent shipments, or guides Dallas travelers, accompanying clients through a chain of portals. Their social connections are formed in queues and waiting areas. They interact with other perpetual travelers, exchanging coordinates of interesting places. But this lifestyle also has a downside. Constantly moving between time zones and climate zones puts a strain on the body, even despite the instantaneous nature of travel. The concepts of home, family, and social circles are blurred. These people exist in limbo, in a perpetual in-between. They are a product of an era where distance has died, but the need for movement remains. They don't travel for a purpose. They move for the sake of movement. Their existence became a living illustration of how technology can not only change lifestyles, but also give birth to an entirely new human subculture for which movement has become an end in itself. But let's consider another aspect. What happens when any point on the planet becomes equally accessible? When the physical barrier of distance ceases to exist, it's not just the traveler or worker who is removed. It's also the one who is removed from the law or who is causing damage. Imagine a famous architectural monument, say an ancient pyramid. Previously, it was protected by its remoteness, the long journey required, and the presence of checkpoints. Now it can be accessed instantly, from anywhere in the world. And we're seeing a sharp increase in incidents. Groups of people teleport to protected sites at night and spray graffiti on ancient walls. Others remove artifacts from archaeological digs, simply taking them and instantly moving on. A mountain peak, once climbed only by the most skilled climbers, is now littered with trash, left behind in minutes by uninvited guests. The concept of a protected area loses its original meaning when the perimeter can be crossed without moving. In response, emergency measures are being launched. Teleportation blocking fields are being erected around valuable objects. Complex biometric control systems are being developed at the exit of cells. Every teleportation now requires not only coordinates, but also a retinal scan or DNA identifier. Global databases are being created to track the movements of every person. Law enforcement agencies are now able to see in real time who is going where. This is sparking a new round of debate. Where is the line between security and privacy? Can we even talk about privacy when your every move is recorded and stored in a gigantic database? Society is faced with a difficult choice. Accept total control for the sake of protecting its cultural and historical heritage, or seek other, as yet unobvious, solutions. Technology, which has erased distances, has forced humanity to redefine the concepts of borders, property, and personal freedom. Now let's consider a less obvious yet fundamental aspect. What happens to the human body when it's deprived of the need to move? Think back to our mornings. The commute to work used to involve a walk to public transportation, climbing stairs, and perhaps an evening jog. Now, That journey has been reduced to a few steps between the room and the teleportation chamber. Not only has the commute disappeared, the need to go shopping, climb stairs, or even simply walk to a point of interest in a new city has disappeared. The body, which for centuries has adapted to movement, suddenly finds itself in a state of forced rest. Medical statistics show alarming trends. A sharp increase in muscle atrophy is being recorded, especially in the lower extremities and trunk. The incidence of musculoskeletal diseases is increasing. Osteoporosis, a problem of the elderly, is beginning to manifest itself in younger people. Cardiologists are noting an increase in cardiovascular diseases caused by chronic physical inactivity. Without regular and varied exercise, the body begins to rapidly deteriorate. Paradoxically, physical freedom of movement in space has turned into physiological confinement. In response, a new industry is emerging, one of forced physical activity. Kinesiotherapy centers are being built everywhere, equipped with exercise machines that simulate natural activities, walking, running, and climbing inclines. These centers are being integrated directly into teleportation nodes, becoming mandatory. Visiting these gyms is transforming from a voluntary practice into a medical necessity prescribed by doctors. Special protocols for daily motor compensation, strictly measured exercises designed to replace lost natural activity, are being developed. This is leading to a rethinking of architecture and urban planning. New types of pedestrian zones are emerging, not as transportation arteries, but as recreational spaces specifically designed for long and varied walks. Stairs are once again becoming preferable to elevators, but for medical reasons. Having solved the problem of traversing great distances, humanity is now faced with a new, unexpected challenge: how to preserve the biological body, which technology has deprived of its evolutionary necessity: movement. The answer to this question must no longer be sought in physics, but in medicine and conscious lifestyle design. So we come to the conclusion of our research. What essentially has changed? Not at the level of infrastructure or logistics, but at the level of human existence. Imagine an ordinary day. In the morning, a person has breakfast in their kitchen overlooking the Norwegian fjords. A moment later, they're in their office, located in a skyscraper somewhere in Singapore. They spend their lunch break strolling through an old square in Prague, and in the evening, they return home to Norway in time for dinner with their family. For them, space is no longer a sequence of traversable distances. It becomes a mosaic, a set of instantly accessible locations. This gives rise to a new perception of the world. Geography ceases to be a physical given and becomes a matter of personal choice. The concept of a small homeland blurs, giving way to the concept of multiple belonging. A person can feel connected to a dozen places simultaneously because they spend a significant part of their life in each of them. The experience of a long journey, of preparing for a journey, of the gradual change of scenery outside the window disappears. Experience becomes discrete, composed of vivid but often unrelated frames. What do we get as a result? Incredible efficiency, unprecedented mobility, freedom from geographic constraints. But at the same time, there's a certain loss of a sense of place, that very aura born of its uniqueness and inaccessibility. The world becomes simultaneously infinitely vast and infinitely small. It's vast in its diversity, now accessible to everyone. And it's small because the distance between its most distant points is no longer a fraction of a second. Teleportation hasn't simply changed the way we travel. It's altered the very fabric of reality in which we exist. It's redefined the concepts of work, home, travel, and community. We've witnessed the greatest revolution in human history, the revolution against space. And now we must live in this new world, where everything is close by, and where perhaps the greatest challenge is not how to get there, but how to find your true home within it.